What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Today we will be talking about some of the top draft night gems that I have come across while watching film. I watch a lot of football, I watch a lot of film, and inevitably when doing so I come across quite a few gems, quite a few players that I believe are not being valued appropriately, and guys that I think could be big steals on draft night. So with that being the case, I wanted to make a video on my top 3 draft night gems that I have found so far. So that is what we'll be talking about today. However, before we get into the video and before we get into talking about these draft night gems, if you're new to the channel and you're enjoying the Lions content or the drafting content, if you're enjoying the NFL draft content or any of the Lions stuff we do on this channel, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes just 2 seconds out of you to do so. It's quick, free, and easy, and you'd be helping the channel out more than you could possibly know. So if you could do that, take those 2 seconds to like and subscribe. I'd be greatly appreciative for it. But with all of that being said, and without any further ado, let's get right into these draft night gems and guys that the Lions could potentially look to target as they work their way down the draft board. Now, as I said, these players are not necessarily guys that will be going in the late rounds, not necessarily guys that I believe will be, 6th, 7th round picks or UDFA players. In fact, most of these players I expect to go on day 2 of the draft. However, just because they are expected to go on day 2 does not mean that these players are not undervalued, underutilized, or underappreciated. So, with that being the case, getting on to our first draft night gem, the first player I came across and the guy that inspired this video was Indiana safety Jamar Johnson. Now, I'm a big fan of Jamar Johnson, and I've been a very big fan since finding him while watching Justin Fields tape, actually. Now, I found Jamar Johnson while scouting Justin Fields. I was watching the Ohio State quarterback, and of course, I wanted to watch his worst game as a player, so I went to the Indiana game. I watched that game in its entirety, and immediately, Jamar Johnson stood out as the best player on that Hoosiers defense and stood out as probably the best player on the field. Now, Jamar Johnson is a 6'1", 197-pound safety. Last year for the Hoosier defense, Jamar Johnson totaled 42 total tackles with 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback sack, 4 interceptions, 4 passes defended, and 1 forced fumble. That is a very, very good stat line, and for any NCAA player, that would be a very good stat line on any given season. However, given the fact that this season was short, and given the fact that the Hoosiers did not play a full season of college football, those statistics look even better than they otherwise would. Now, that is a very impressive 2020 stats. That is a very impressive takeaway from the 2020 season. However, if you go back to his past 2 seasons as the Hoosiers starting safety, Jamar Johnson's stats look even more impressive. Now, Jamar Johnson in his last 2 seasons with Indiana played a total of 406 total coverage snaps on the defensive side of the ball. Now, in those 406 total coverage snaps, he was targeted a total of just 44 times while allowing 0 touchdowns, coming away with 7 interceptions and several more passes defended. Jamar Johnson, I think, is one of the better safeties in this draft class. He's a versatile safety. He played several roles on the Hoosier defense and is a very, very good player. He's a leader on the defense. He's a smart safety, and I think his biggest strength that he will take into the NFL is his mind and the way he just plays with quarterbacks. I mean, if you watch that Justin Fields game, if you watch how Justin Fields played, if you watch how that Indiana defense tried to defend Ohio State, they held them to arguably the worst day of that program, and then they held them to arguably the worst game of the season, and a lot of that had to do with Jamar Johnson's great production and great performance against Ohio State. Jamar Johnson, time and time again in that game, played mind games. He would switch coverage. The Indiana defense would switch coverage. They would, post coverage. They would rotate, and they would confuse Justin Fields, and of course, as I mentioned, hold Justin Fields to his worst game as a college quarterback. Now, a lot of that had to do with Jamar Johnson. A lot of that had to do with what he's able to do. A lot of it had to do with his ability as a safety and his ability to make plays in the air and cover ground and really just be, as I said, the best player on that Indiana defense. Now, Jamar Johnson is an extremely smart safety. He knows exactly where to be and when to be there, and his smarts, his intelligence, and his instincts as a safety make up for some of his inconsistencies and some of his physical limitations. Now, the reason Jamar Johnson is not considered one of the top safeties in this class is likely because of his athletic ability. He is not the fastest guy. He is not the most explosive guy. He is projected to run in about the 4.6 range, which is a little slow for a safety. However, it is not a end-all be-all. It is not a death sentence for the safety, as there have been several safeties over the years to run in the 4.6s and still have a relatively productive career. Now, another thing that I don't like about Jamar Johnson is at times he can get a little inconsistent when it comes to tackling, not because he's not willing to do so. He's more than willing to get his hands dirty. He's more than willing to go into a tackle, more than willing to hit somebody, more than willing to step up and make a play in the box. It's just not necessarily his strong suit. His strong suit is in coverage. His strong suit, his strengths at the free safety position is coverage, is his ability to get to the ball, get the ball in his hands, break the ball up, make it hit the ground, not allow those completions and not allow big plays down the field. That is where he is the best. That is where he thrives in a defense, and I believe that is where the Lions would put him if they were to draft him. They would put him right alongside Tracy Walker, and they would potentially play a 2-high safety set or something that would allow both Tracy Walker and Jamar Johnson to play in the deep half of the field, to each have a deep half and really be able to shut things down from there. Now, Jamar Johnson is actually, according to Pro Football Focus and according to Sports Illustrated, is ranked as the 14th safety in the class. Now, I have not watched every single safety in this class, but I can guarantee you Jamar Johnson is not the 14th best safety. I don't know if he's top 10, but he's right around there. He's a top 10 safety, in my opinion, in this draft class. And the fact that he's ranked 14th, the fact that he's not even projected to go until the 200s range, I think is very, very underestimating his ability. I think he's going to be taken much earlier. I think he's going to be taken far earlier than some pick in the 200s, and whatever team does end up getting him in the mid to late rounds will get an absolute steal in the former Indiana alumni. The second player and the second gem that I wanted to talk about today was a defensive tackle, a defensive lineman from The Ohio State University. Now, this draft class is not known and it is not really hyped up to be the greatest defensive line class. However, I do believe that there is one player in this class that is going to be a late round steal and is going to be a draft night gem for whatever team is lucky enough to pick him. Now, this gem is Tommy Togi, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. Now, Tommy Togi is a 6'2", 300-pound defensive tackle. Last year for the Buckeyes defense, he totaled only 23 total tackles, had 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 passes defended, along with a forced fumble. Now, those stats might not sound great. Those stats might not sound otherworldly or sound like he's a draft night gem. However, Tommy Togi is not what the stats would suggest. Unlike a lot of players in this class, unlike a lot of the offensive weapons, defensive stats and especially stats for defensive tackles can be extremely misleading, especially when you have guys like Aaron Donald that light up the stat sheet, making everybody else seem inferior. Now, Tommy Togi, his biggest strength is his strength. He's a very strong player. He's a guy that put up 40 reps on the bench at the Ohio State Pro Day. I believe that is a school record and is close to being a combine record as well if he were to participate in the combine and if the combine were to happen this year. Tommy Togi is a very, very good player. He's an incredibly strong player. He does not get pushed off the ball very well. He has incredible upper body strength, incredible lower body strength, and just has incredible power as a player, and that is where his strengths lie. He's a very good run stopper. He was probably and arguably was the best player on that Ohio State defense when they played Clemson. A big reason why they were able to defeat the Clemson Tigers in the college football semifinals was because of the defensive performance, and a lot of the defensive performance came from Tommy Togi just straight taking over that game, shutting down the run, creating pretty good penetration, really good pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and allowing his edge rushers to get home and really affect the quarterback, which of course made the rest of the defense look much better. Tommy Togi recovered a fumble in that game. He had a sack in that game. He got a lot of pressures, forced a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and was a big reason, and as I said, was the best player on that Buckeye defense that night. I'd be a big fan of Tommy Togi. He's expected to go in like the late 3, early 4, so late day 2, early day 3 kind of a range. I'd be very excited for the Lions to draft him. I think he's John Pennicini. If John Pennicini had a little bit more power, if John Pennicini was just a little bit stronger, that is what you're getting in Tommy Togi. The Lions have a lot of struggles at defensive line. The Lions have a lot of question marks there, and a guy in Tommy Togi could be a very good way for them to shore up their rushing defense, could be a really good rotational guy early, and especially once Michael Brockers retires, him and John Pennicini could be a really, really good duo, could be a really good run-stopping duo, and be a duo that's very good good at creating pressure, won't necessarily get you the sacks, won't necessarily get you the flashy numbers, but guys, two guys in the middle that will do the dirty work every single play and every single snap of a game that will allow the rest of the defense to feast and allow the rest of the defense to have a very good day. The third draft gem that I want to talk about today, and the first draft gem on the offensive side of the ball that we will be talking about, is a guy that many Lions fans are familiar with and a guy that a lot of people are incredibly high on. However, I don't think people are necessarily high enough on UCLA's Demetric Felton. Now, Demetric Felton is a wide receiver slash running back combination. He played a little bit of both at UCLA, and at the Senior Bowl played primarily wide receiver, where he was arguably the best route runner and arguably one of the toughest wide receivers to stop at the Senior Bowl. Now Demetric Felton is only 5'10", but he does weigh 200 pounds, so he has a little bit of weight to him, has a little bit of muscle, but as far as height, is a little bit undersized to be a wide receiver. Now, in his time at UCLA, Demetric Felton totaled 332 total touches of the football, totaling over 2,059 yards with 8 touchdowns, while averaging 6.2 yards per touch. Now, he did not have the greatest numbers at UCLA, did not really get 1,000 yards rushing or receiving, didn't really test great at his combine, didn't have a lot of great pro day numbers, didn't run a fast 40, have a great vert, or have a great broad jump, or anything along those lines. However, the tape would say different to me. The tape to me tells me he is an explosive player, tells me he's a versatile player. The tape to me tells me that he would be a good fit in Detroit, and I would be a very big fan of picking him up on late day 2, early day 3. Demetric Felton will fall a little bit because of his size. Demetric Felton will fall a little bit likely because his testing numbers did not look what some people were expecting him to do. He could fall midway through day 3. He could fall to that 5th, 6th round range where the Lions would scoop him up and get a very good, very versatile weapon for very little draft capital, and as one of their last picks in the draft, could pick up a really, really good weapon. And I say weapon because he's not really a true wide receiver. He's not really a true running back. He kind of does a little bit of both, and yet does both at an extremely high level. This could be our Curtis Samuel. This could be our dynamic playmaking weapon, a guy that can contribute in the run, a guy that can contribute in the pass, and a guy that could really make this Lions offense dynamic, especially if the Lions are going in the direction I believe they will go. Now, with all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Those are my first 3 draft gems. Those are guys that I think are not being valued enough, guys that I do not believe are getting enough hype or getting enough respect for what they did at the college level, and guys that I believe will be much better at the NFL level than what scouts and people are giving them credit for. Now, with all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. If there's more Lions news, if there's more Lions rumors to come out, of course I will make another video letting every single person know. But until then, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching the video, and as always, go Lions.